Today we're going to be learning more about AutoCAD. AutoCAD is our two-dimensional software. This is what the opening page looks like. And we can open files. In the T drive, we will have full files for you for this specific assignment. When you click on the file, you open up something like this. It might not have a title block, but you'll be seeing something that we've prepared for you. If I have a drawing like this, there are a couple things that you need to notice. Number one, there's a grid in the background. This grid can be used to help you draw out things. So currently this grid is set to 1/4 inch grid, and the major grid is 1 inch. So if I were to draw this square on the major grid lines, that would be 1 inch by 1 inch. The smaller grids that are in light gray are 1/4 inch. We can use our mouse to select things. You can see that each line will have 3 blue squares. The end blue square can adjust the end of the line. The middle blue square can move the line. When you have a line or circle selected, you can hit the delete button, not the backspace, but the delete button, and that will erase whatever you've drawn. The line command can be used to draw lines, and you can use a couple of different techniques. You can use the grid, but you can also use what are called polar coordinates. And so you can see that in blue on the screen, it shows the distance of that line. I can, at this point, type in a distance. If I hit tab, it will switch from the distance to an angle. And you can see how I can move this around and it will change the angle. So let's say I want a 3-inch line at a 45-degree angle. I can hit 45 and then I can hit tab again and it'll switch between the two. If I hit enter, it will finish the line and start the next line. When you're drawing, the mouse will snap to the grid. If you'd like the mouse to not snap to the grid, down here we have this little section of the screen. This will turn on and off the grid view. This will turn on and off the snap to the grid. So right now I'm drawing, but it's not snapping. If I turn this blue again, you can see that it snaps to the grid. I typically will leave the grid on even if I'm not choosing to use the snap. There's also an object snap, and that is this one right here with the blue square with the little green corner. And in this, I have lots of different object snaps. Endpoint snap will allow me to draw to an endpoint. So, and it is, if I draw here, I can show that endpoint. It's that green square that shows up around the end of the line. I can also draw to a midpoint. The triangle that you see at the end of the line here, that's demonstrating a midpoint. There are a number of these. You can go to the center of a circle, center of a geometric object like a polygon, rectangles, octagons, things like that. A node is a point. So there's actually a node right here. That point that I placed there in this drawing, that's a node. Quadrant. So if we have a circle, the quadrant of the circle would be the top, right, bottom, and left side of that circle. Okay? The perfect top, bottom, left, and right of the circle. Intersection is where two lines cross. So if I had an additional line that crossed just like that, I could find the intersection between those two lines, and it's shown with a green X. And I can draw from that point. Extension is kind of neat. This is a newer function, but imagine this line. It could hit right here. And you see how the extension is creating that green dashed line to an intersection on the circle? I can actually click there, and this is the point where if this continued, it would hit. And this works for a lot of things. Sometimes you have to hover over the end of the line you want to extend and then sort of follow it out to where it would hit. Perpendicular is just as it sounds. It's a line. So if I draw a line, any point out here, and I go on here, this is the point where it's perpendicular. So I don't know what angle this line's at, but this line is at a 90 degree to that line. Nearest is an interesting snap, object snap, that chooses any point. So any point along this is nearest. Do you see how that little green, it almost looks like an hourglass? That hourglass shape demonstrates that any point on any of these lines is the nearest point. Okay. Oftentimes I turn that off because it can cause you to make mistakes. There are a number of other drawing commands here. We have different ways to draw circles. We have arcs. We have polylines. Polylines make a single object out of multiple lines. We also have polygons. So, and you're always going to want to read this bottom section. It says polygon, enter number of sides. Well, I want to make an octagon, so I'm going to type 8 for number of sides. And then it tells me it wants, if you read at the bottom, it says specify center of polygon. Well, I want the center to be maybe the center of this circle. So you can see I can, right here, I can hover over the circle and it indicates the center, and then you can see the green circle. That means that it's object snapping to the center of that circle. And then it asks me, do you want it inscribed in the circle or circumscribed about the circle? Inscribed means it would be inside the circle, and circumscribed means it would be outside the circle. So let's say inscribed, and then when I click on the edge of the circle, you can see that the polygon is inside of the circle. Now let's say that I changed my mind. I want that polygon to be on the outside of the circle. Click on polygon. Notice it kept 8 as the number of sides. So I can just type enter. Specify center, well, I can hover over here, find the object snap to the center of that circle, but now I want it circumscribed. Now, I can do a couple of things. I can click it here, or I can even come down here, click here, or if you notice the C is in blue, I can type C, enter, and now it's doing what's called circumscribing the circle. I can click the edge of the circle, and now you can see that this polygon is outside of the circle. It's circumscribing the circle, where the first one we drew is inscribed within the circle. We also have the ability to draw ellipses. We start out by drawing the center of the ellipse. We draw the major axis and minor axis, and we can draw an ellipse. We can also draw text. I tend to like to do single line text. So you click here, and now read what it says. Specify start point of text. So I'm going to click a point, and then it says specify rotation angle. So it's not just simple horizontal text. I can make it go on an angle if I want. Let's type in 45 degrees. And then it wants to know what text. Text. And then you hit enter twice, and it will place your text there. Now, if you want to change the font of the text, you go up here to annotation, and right here there are different types, but we can go to manage text styles, and within this we can actually change the font. So let's say that I wanted Arial bold or black, Arial black, a nice bold text, and hit apply, close, and now it'll change the text to Arial bold. There are a number of modify commands, all of which would be right here. We can move an object, and always remember to read the bottom here. It says move select objects. All right, well, I'm going to move this set of polygons that we drew. So I selected them. Now I can press enter, spacebar, or right click. And then it says specify base point. Well, the base point, I can click anywhere for the base point. But for this particular one, I want to pick the center. And so now the base point is the point where you grab it. So I grabbed it at the center. And so now if I wanted the center of this to be the same as the center of this, I can move it to the object snap for the center of that. Also, there's copy. Copy is a lot like move, but it creates a copy of the object that you're creating. So I can click copy, and then it says select objects. Well, I'm going to select the same set of octagons. I hit spacebar, enter, or right click. I'm going to pick the center, and now it's like a stamp. I can place a number of these out there. Rotate takes an object and rotates it. So right now it says select object, so I'm going to select our text. I'm going to hit spacebar once I've selected everything, or enter, or right click. And then it says specify base point. Well, this base point will be the point that the text will rotate around. So I could pick the middle of the text, or this corner, or I could even pick a point out here, and whatever point I choose, the text will rotate around that point. Okay, so for this case, I want to select the text, and I want to pick the center of the text, and I want it to be straight now. So you can see that right there, it looks pretty good, but I put it at a 45-degree angle, and I want to change that to -45, or I could take 360 degrees and subtract 45 degrees from that, which would be 315 degrees. And you can see right now that looks right. Scale. Let's say I'm happy with that text, but I want it bigger. I can go to scale, And then I read this, it says select objects. Well, I want to select the text. And then I hit spacebar, enter, or right click. And then it says specify base point. All right, well, if I click a point down here, the text is going to move away from me as it gets bigger. If I pick a point in the center of the text will get bigger around the base point. So let's go ahead and choose that, and then I can just sort of move my mouse to make it bigger and smaller. However, I can also just say, all right, I want it 4 times bigger than it was before. So I can type 4, and 4 would indicate 400%. Now let's say that I like that, but it's a little bit too big. So I'm going to go and scale that down. Maybe I want it half that size. So when I get in here, I can type in 0.5. 0.5 would be 50% the size. And then if I hit enter, you can see that it's gotten half as small. Trim. Trim is a command that has a sister command that both work really well and are something that you should definitely use. Let's say I have these goofy lines crossing over like that. If I go to trim, I can select all of these lines, hit enter, spacebar, or right click, and then I can use trim to remove the things that were beyond what I wanted. Now notice this line right here, I can't trim that. The reason I can't trim it is because it would delete the entire line. If you have to delete an entire line, it's not trimming. We can select it and hit delete, and we can erase it. Another way to erase is the erase command. If you click on the erase command, we can select an object and hit spacebar, enter, or right click, and it will delete it. Now, the trim commands, I told you that it had a sister command, and that's called extend. Extend takes lines that don't quite make it to where you want them to go, and so we can use extend, and you have to first choose the line you want to extend it to. Then you hit enter, spacebar, or right click, and then you click the line you want to extend. Another fun one is called array. Array takes an object, let's say we want a bunch of these circle with octagons, and we want a bunch of those. So we click array, we select the object, we hit spacebar, and so here is what's called a rectangular array. You can see that we have 4 across and 3 up. Now we can change that. We can say we want 3 across and 4 up. I can also change the distance between. So if I change this to 2 inches, you can see that they got closer together. Or I can make it larger, make it 4 inches between. So you can change a lot here. Polar array makes a circular array of an object. So you choose the object, and then you want to choose a center point. Well, I'm going to choose a center point out here, and you can see that it's creating a circular array of objects. And we can change the number of objects. So maybe instead of 6, I'd like 10 objects. And there it is. So array can make some pretty cool designs. We also have offset. Offset, when we click offset, it first asks us, specify the distance. Well, in this case, I'm going to choose 1 inch. And then it says, select object to offset. Well, I'm going to offset this line. And then it says, specify point on side to offset. Now, I can choose above or beneath. And what it did was it created another line, exactly like the first line, that was 1 inch away, perfectly parallel. And I can continue to offset lines like that, and I get all these lines that are perfectly parallel to the initial line. If you offset a circle, it offsets the entire circle. So each one of these circles is 1 inch apart. It also works with ellipses. The fillet command allows you to make a corner a rounded corner. So right here it says select first object or undo polyline radius trim multiple. Well, right now our radius as default is 0, so we would need to type in R for radius. And then we have to change the radius to 0.25 or something larger than 0. And then it says select first object. Well, I'm going to select this line. And then it says select second object. I'm going to select this line. And what it does is it makes a perfectly round corner that's got a 1/4 inch radius. You can also do something similar with circles. I can go to tangent radius, and I can tell it I want a circle tangent to this line and tangent to this line with a 0.25 radius, and you can see that it created a circle that is perfectly touching on this line, perfectly touching this line, and has a 0.25 radius. There's also tangent. In tangent, I can make a circle tangent to 3 lines. I can make it tangent to this line, and this line. And that would make a perfect circle that touches all 3 of those. And then I could come back and I could trim each of these off. Now notice this won't trim because I'm deleting the entire line. So I can come in afterwards and I can delete that. You can also trim circles.